Hello, everybody. It is April, and you are listening to the Audio Games Podcast. I'm Neil.
And I'm Matt, and it's the day after April Fools. Did you happen to see any fun April Fools things online, Neil?
I actually, barely looked online at all, but I remembered right before my normal Monday night stream that it's April Fool's Day, so my normal, stream is starting soon thing, I had, say, stream canceled for the, 6 minutes before I started.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well,
that was my entire April Fool's pranking.
Yeah, my April Fool's was like, let's record the podcast yesterday, and then I was like, never mind.
April Fools, no April more podcast.
We'll do it tomorrow. I'm tired.
Oh boy, that's okay. Like I said, I'm also tired, but you know what? I'm not tired of.
What are you not tired of, Neil?
Fucking Dragon's Dogma, my guy. I have been
staying up too late
playing that game.
You're enjoying it.
I am. I'm liking it a lot. And I played Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen earlier this year. We talked about it a bit on the podcast, and I could see a lot of jank, but mostly I enjoyed that game. And when I had finished it, there was a part of me going do I want to play more of this? Because I kind of did, but with 2 coming out so soon, I said, I'll wait for 2. And 2 is out now. It is a bigger open world for sure. They've smoothed over some pieces, but honestly, the kind of core of what pushes back on you in the original Dragon's Dogma is really still here in Dragon's Dogma 2.
Okay.
And I really think it's good. I think a big part of it really comes down to the pawn system. And I know it's weird
rude
to say,
calling them pawns. That's kind of diminutive.
That's what they're called.
Sure, but don't they call you the Risen or whatever?
They call you the Arisen or Master most of the time.
And you call them pawns, and they call each other pawns.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's not a lot of respect there.
Yeah, they are a very weird class of pseudo-human.
Are they like homunculi? I don't actually know the lore.
Yeah, they're more like homunculi.
I see. So they're subhuman, and they deserve to be treated poorly.
Not what I'm saying, but what I am saying is I feel like the pawn system in the first game, for the most part, they're running around being weirdos, but they really did a good job of making your pawns feel like they are helpful in the new one, comparatively.
Okay.
And part of that is not just because, they'll heal you. It's because the game doesn't just put shit all over the map for you. What it does is have the pawns kind of point stuff out as you're running by in the world in ways that feel like, oh, they are paying attention to the environment in ways that I'm missing stuff too. I didn't see that I can go find a chest over there or whatever, And
yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, we're living in an age of games where there's a lot of banter, and I'm kind of at the point where I'm kind of getting over that. I remember we talked about Biomutant a while back, and how the narrator just never shuts up, and how that kind of ruined the game for a lot of people. And then there's also Subnautica Below Zero, right? It's here's a game where they nailed the first one and the atmosphere and the loneliness of being on this planet, and then they brought in a bunch of characters and a lot of chatter, and it's just oh, this is ruining my immersion. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think that maybe I just want to be alone in a video game. I don't do a lot of multiplayer stuff, if I'm honest, and I think that if they start emulating multiplayer, that's gonna be kind of annoying to me.
I do hear you on that, but I think in part the reason it works for me is because it helps smooth over some of the stuff that I sometimes chafe against in a normal open world. And by that I mean and, you know, this is a weird thing just from, like, the way my brain works. I struggle against completionist tendencies sometimes. And an open world is sometimes really bad for that, and part of the reason I chafe against them is, like, I'm kind of completionist-y, but open worlds really sometimes are either leaning into that in a way where you're going to see everything, or they are saying, like, you can't. And I prefer the you can't. And Dragon's Dogma goes a step further by, rather than saying you can't see everything because, you know, you're making choices in quests, who knows how that stuff's playing out and what it's going to do in the future. But even running around the world, you know, a pawn will open a chest and then be like, oh, I found a fucking normal-ass potion. And they'll comment like, oh, that sucks, it's just a normal thing. I was hoping for, like, gold, like, something cool. And another pawn will be like, you can't expect something cool in every chest. And it just kind of, like, hearing them say that kind of stuff to me makes me go, like, right, I don't need to open every chest because there's not necessarily going to be the most amazing thing, but it
I mean, I'm glad you take it that way, because I take that as, like, oh, the writers are preempting my anger. They're trying to, like...
No.
They're trying to, like, make it feel like I'm not allowed to feel something.
I hear you, but what I mean is, for me, what that ends up doing is it makes it feel like when I do decide to go into a random cave and explore a little bit, and I do find something that's actually, like, cool or more impactful, it feels like a bigger deal, because I'm not just opening random chests somewhere and getting everything I need, and they're commenting on that. It makes it feel like both I don't need to look for everything, and when I decide to go off the beaten path and look for stuff, finding things is more rewarding. And I know it's just like a placebo thing, but having these pawns speak about the world, talk about the world, like, really helps embody it for me in a way that playing a lot of other open world games feels like I'm just fucking going down a checklist in a really uninteresting way.
You know, I actually watched a video very recently by a YouTuber named Eddie Burback about, like, the Apple Vision Pro. And in it, like, he was like just going through the normal apps and stuff, and, like, he was on TikTok, and he kept getting these ads for, like, AI girlfriends. Mm-hmm. And it's just, like, they're just AI that, like, use machine replication of voices, and they just, like, talk to you. And they tell, like, they're like, how's your day? You know, what have you been up to?
Yeah.
And I mean, part of that feels like just fishing for data. But the other part is, like, I feel like this is clearly, like, preying on people who are very lonely.
Yes.
And I can't help but feel like you talked about listening to pawns talk about, like, you know what? Yeah, maybe we shouldn't expect every chest to be amazing. It's just, like, it's kind of, I don't know, Neil. This feels like maybe you should find some other people to play video games with.
Hey. I would love to have more social life than I do. Let's not beat around the bush.
No, I'm not saying that you don't. I'm just saying that, like, the pawns bantering about the contents of a treasure chest might be filling a gap larger than what you have initially perceived to be a hole.
Quite possibly. And I mean, it goes further than that. That's just one example. The fact that, like, there's elves in this world, and the only way you can actually understand what they're saying is if you have a pawn with you who can speak Elvish.
Okay, but do they actually speak a different language and they interpret it for you, or do you hear them speaking English if you have a pawn?
You hear them speaking Elvish still, but it's getting translated if you have a pawn that speaks it.
No, and
like
you can't make a character. You can't make a character that knows Elvish. You have to have a pawn for that.
No,
that's very Metal Gear Solid 5.
And so you can also, like, earn your way to giving that to your own pawn. But this is what I mean by, like, the pawns feel impactful is it goes beyond just they are bantering, that kind of stuff. There's mechanical benefits to running a pawn that has this or that compared to another one. And it's, I don't know, it really works for me in a way that I didn't necessarily expect it to. More so than the original, where the pawn system was fun and goofy, but it wasn't feeling impactful in this way. It just made it feel like you always have backup. And this feels like more than backup.
Well, okay, it feels like it's a little more living, breathing. If still, like, clearly NPC living, breathing.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, I can see how it makes the world feel a little more lived in if you have, other characters following you around and, pretending to take in the world that they're pretending that they don't know. Because, it's all orchestrated.
Well, I mean, that's part of it, right? The whole thing about pawns is they can travel between worlds. Like, in-game, yes, when someone hires your pawn.
That's weird.
Yes, that's like a part of this world.
Okay.
So you will have pawns literally, your pawn might go off and do stuff, and then you come back, you open up your game, you rested it in, your pawn's like, hey, I went and did an adventure. And then they will be like, oh, when I went with this other dude doing this quest, there was something cool over here. Do you want me to help, like, show you that?
Okay, this is very much emulating friends playing a game. But role playing.
It like literally is though. I'm pretty sure the
This is like playing an E3 demo. It's like, hey, we should really like hunker down over here. I think there's gonna be enemies up ahead. It's like this is what the people talk like when they're demoing a game, like at E3. But now it's like just an NPC character that is actually in the game.
Correct.
And not an actor. That's.
But the meta part of it makes it work on top of it for me. Anyway.
Because it's explained in lore and in universe, it actually makes it. It makes it. It's justified.
It truly does help.
Okay.
Anyway, they also did a bunch.
Question.
Okay. Sure.
We have all this interesting and unique pawn system in Dragon's Dogma 2, and I guess it's improved over the Dragon's Dogma 1 pawn situation, right?
Yes.
Well, how come there's still no nemesis system like Shadow of Mordor? If they have like this infrastructure for all these characters, shouldn't there be like cool assassins traveling between worlds and like having like these vendettas and talking about the last player they killed and like I'm gonna get you now, and that'd be cool, right?
There's none of that I've run into yet.
They can call them dark pawns or anti-pawns.
There might be stuff like that in this game. I'm not sure about. The big ones I've heard about people freaking out about is dragon plague and stuff, but
diseased pawns with the glowing red eyes. Yeah, I've read a little bit about that, but
yeah,
I don't know. It just reminds me of Sekiro.
At any rate, you can tell that Capcom has had 12 years since the original game came out of honing their third-person action chops.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can definitely see how this is an improvement over the original Dragon's Dogma, but I've also been hearing a lot of discourse about problems with this game. Sure.
Let's talk about some of those, because the big one I heard about was, oh my god, the microtransactions.
Wow, you're gonna do a mocking voice talking about microtransactions.
I am.
Wow.
Here's why.
Okay, all right.
The two big things I saw people being like, oh my god, I can't believe they're doing microtransaction for this shit, is number one, character remaking, more or less. Like, going into the character editor to, like, shape your face. You can pay, like, $2 to get an item to do that in-game, right?
Okay.
You can also pay some in-game currency for it. If you spend, like, 2 hours playing the game, you'll have enough to do it.
Okay.
So, like, not a big deal if you ask me, that kind of microtransaction. The other one people are freaking out about is, oh my god, this game is about, like, having fast travel be limited, and you can pay money to get fast travel unlimited, and that is factually incorrect.
Okay. Well, how does it work?
So, you can find items that'll let you use the fast travel, where you can go to the points on the map that have a port crystal.
Okay.
You can also find in the game, and this was true in the last game as well, some port crystals that you can place in the world to make a brand new fast travel point.
Okay. Well, where's the
There
money
is a
come in?
microtransaction where you can purchase one time a singular extra port crystal to make a new fast travel point, not to actually be able to fast travel more.
Okay, but there's no like actual limit on the amount that you fast travel.
There is an item in game. It is fairly expensive. I've also have like 10 in my inventory because
Okay, weird
quests
flex.
are giving them to me. I'm finding them in chests. They are
So what you're
for a
saying is
game
you're
that
rich.
says yes. Yeah, exactly. For a game that is like, oh, fast travel's limited. Yes, it is limited. It has also felt pretty fucking abundant to me.
Okay, well here's a follow up on that. In every game that I've played that limited fast travel for whatever reason, it was partly hardware based. Like they knew that the game could not handle like jumping around these really big areas. It's an open world game. There's lots that has to load, and part of that loading happens as you traverse. And so jumping from one place to another is very taxing to the hardware, right? So this is mainly a Red Dead Redemption 2 thing. Like, that was really pushing the limits of the consoles at the time, and they knew that if there was fast travel, you'd be sitting on a screen for like a minute and a half, waiting for, things to load in.
Yeah.
And so they prevented that. I don't think that's an issue for modern hardware. So I'm imagining that maybe there's a reason that they want you to traverse without fast travel.
I think a lot of it is just the way the game is kind of built around its systems and stuff. It wants you, and I think the pawn system again feeds into this. Generally speaking, it wants you to sit down and go do something in the game, and it wants that to kind of feel like an adventure. And fast travel doesn't feel like an adventure. Honestly, the way I'm using fast travel is if I'm getting at like the end of the night and I'm like, all right, I should go to bed, I use it to go back to the main city and like clean up my inventory and save and go to bed. Like,
okay.
The idea of trying to use it for other things, and there are some other like pseudo fast travel in the game that is frankly unlimited with the like ox carts. But those are like, you go from one point and they go to another point. And when you get on them, you can hit like a button to go to sleep, and then it'll kind of just get you there immediately, unless it gets attacked on the way. In which case you'll open up and be like, oh shit, like a griffin is attacking us and I have to deal with this before we can continue the fast travel. And those are unlimited. They're just more limited in where they go.
Okay. Well, okay. Here, I think ultimately what it comes down to is this, Neil. You don't like open world games.
I don't.
Not normally. But you're not peeved by the fast travel system, it seems.
Not at all in this game. And this is a weird thing also, because Dragon's Dogma 1, from what I understand, had a limited fast travel system, and one of the things they changed in it when they did Dark Arisen's expansion is they added an unlimited fast travel item. So you still had the limited places to go, but you could always use them. And there was a point when I was playing through that first game where like some of the things that I was doing in Dragon's Dogma 1 was like opening up cave systems that would become shortcuts between two parts of the map. And I had zero reason to ever use them. I did a quest to unlock them, but I was fast traveling everywhere, so why would I use them? And so this game taking that out, part of me wonders if I would have chafed against it more in Dragon's Dogma 1 than I am in this one. Partly because I just think the world is more interesting overall than the first game, to say the least. And the pawn system feeds into all of that, obviously. But also, like, the moment-to-moment, how the different vocations feel or classes feel with the weapons you get to use, all that stuff also is just fun to engage with, which, I'm going to throw a little bit of shade at some other games that I've chafed against. I don't think Skyrim is fun to play at a base level.
Wow.
So, like, I find that game awkward and not fun to engage with, right? Whereas this one is, so.
Oh man, I don't know, Neil. I don't know what to say at this point.
Yeah.
You don't like Skyrim?
I know, shocking.
Wow. Well, I mean, I'm glad you're enjoying Dragon's Dogma 2 in spite of your normal hate of such things. I do think that you are probably seeing a lot of, like, the improvements over the original game because you had played it so recently.
True.
I think that a lot of people who had, like, played Dragon's Dogma back when it first came out and are like, oh, Dragon's Dogma 2, and they're playing it, they probably forgot a lot of, like, what the original experience was like. So, I think there's some value that you are able to have more or less uniquely yours in terms of insight.
Well, and I do have to admit, like, there's a lot about this game that does not feel like it is taking modern sensibilities into account.
But do you think that's deliberate?
I do.
Okay.
And one of the reasons I think it is working for me is I don't, like, yes, I am the Arisen, I am an important person, but I, as this important person, am not, like, wildly powerful compared to other things or people, you know? So
okay. Well, you dipped your toe in the lore a little bit, explaining like what the deal is with pawns, but like, what is that? What is the Arisen? What does that actually mean?
Sure. How many spoilers for how the structure of Dragon's Dogma's world works do you want?
I don't give a shit because I'm not going to play that game, so you can say whatever you want, except for the people who are worried about Dragon's Dogma 2 spoilers, in which case you might want to skip ahead.
I'm gonna assume a lot of this is carrying over. In Dragon's Dogma 1, what the end of that game is you figuring out that the world is, in fact, a world that is on a loop. It is on a loop because the kind of willpower of the world is somebody who needs to find a replacement for themselves. And when they are trying to do that, what ends up happening is they find somebody with the use of their dragons. Those dragons come down, they find a person who seems to have strong willpower, they pluck their heart out of them, and they become an Arisen, or a Dragon Forged, whatever you want to call them, and go on this quest to try to kind of reach the willpower of the world, this other person who has been in this sovereign state.
Okay, so it's like the throne of God or whatever.
Yes. If the Arisen fails to defeat that person and replace them, they become the next dragon and go back into the loop to try to find a different Arisen. If they succeed, they are supplanting the sovereign and now being kind of the cog that the world loops around. And pawns can go between loops to other people's worlds and other Arisen and all that.
Okay, so you become an Arisen, and if you fail, you turn to a dragon that has to go find the new one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but what happens to the dragon that actually does find the Arisen?
I believe that it dies because you kill it in the process of getting to the sovereign.
Well, gee, why wouldn't you just go rogue if you're a dragon?
You are bound to the will of the basically god of the world.
Oh, that sucks.
Uh-huh.
Well, you better succeed.
Yeah, probably. It's honestly fascinating. But we've talked enough about Dragon's Dogma because
we've put a whole quarter of this podcast.
We have. And while Dragon's Dogma and me talking about the pawns and how I think they're really cool, you've also been playing a game where you don't really have full control over your party with Unicorn Overlord.
Yeah, and boy, is it not an interesting story, let me tell you.
Uh-oh.
But hey, you know what? My impression of Unicorn Overlord has improved over my last little talk about it in the previous episode. A lot of the systems have really come into a more broad potential, I suppose,
Mm-hmm,
and what
mm-hmm.
I see as possible in this game. I had seen maybe like 8 classes by the time I had recorded that episode, and like now I'm seeing like 23, and there's still more. Like each region has like its own unique classes, and so when
Whoa.
I said it was kind of like Super Auto Pets, like it's actually really like Super Auto Pets in the sense that like there's a lot of different things you have to take into account when you go into the fray with a composition in your team. But the other thing is like it's kind of brilliant in the way that it handles its complexity, in the sense that like when you first start out, you have only the most simplest classes that interact in the most simple ways, and you also have very limited team sizes because there's this subsystem called Renown that you gain as you like complete side quests and complete main quests, and you just generally do things in the world that kind of it locks you to certain team sizes. And so
Okay.
I can only have a unit of up to 4 characters right now, and the maximum is 6, at least as far as I know. So it becomes kind of like very chaotic at that point, I imagine. Like it does that thing like Mega Man X where like it kind of previews like what's coming up in the game by like doing like a really brief tutorial where you do fight with 6 units as like a prologue thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like when I was watching, I was like, I have no idea what's fucking going on here. But the game has done a very good job at pacing it so that it does not get boring. Like it's constantly introducing new concepts and new things, but it's also kind of teaching me like how to adapt to all these new systems. I also talked about a little bit how it has like the Final Fantasy 12 Gambit system where yeah, you don't really control your units, but you can kind of like give them general orders, right?
Yeah.
So like you might tell your archer to always attack the lowest HP on the other team. Well, a lot of items actually give you additional skills. So I mean, again, this is as far as I've gotten, but a character has 1 weapon and 2 accessories. And no matter what you equip, there's different items that give different skills. So you might be putting like a support skill on an otherwise offensive unit, and then you can prioritize what skills the different units use. And there's 2 separate like action economy gems, I guess you could say, where you have PP and you have AP. AP is action points, PP is passive points, and so the PP is more for like reactive things, and the AP is more for like the main actions that your character can perform. And so you're like kind of basically programming in this own unique unicorn based programming language, and it's gotten to be a pretty big time sink for me. I'll be honest. I'm enjoying it, but like I do spend a lot of time not actually like doing battles and just tweaking my little battalions.
Huh.
But yeah, there has actually been pretty interesting story beats, and I know that we live in an era where like every game talks about how your decisions always matter and like how it's always going to affect the story. But pretty early on, Elaine, the guy who's like trying to reclaim the throne for Cornea, which is a horrible name by the way. Cornea not only evokes corn, but I get like they're trying to go for the unicorn thing, but it's also like all I think of is corn. But that's the name of their nation. He's trying to reclaim Cornea. He comes into post-battle decisions that involve like, do I kill this guy? Do I just straight up kill him because like he's done these horrible things? But like almost every villain that I've come across has like this little monologue they do after they're beaten that like explains like why they were doing what they were doing. And a lot of them have like all right excuses, you know? I mean, some of them have really poor excuses, but you are given a moral decision, and the moral decision is: do I execute this person, or do like I do something else? And sometimes that thing is turning them over to like the local authorities for that town, because then they can answer to the people who they wronged. Sometimes it's like, do I just let them go? Sometimes it's, do I ask them to join? And as far as I've been able to tell, they all have like very different consequences. So you can have a pretty different playthrough. But yeah, I think that there's within this very generic story, there are interesting character developments. And I think that's kind of where the game shines.
Okay. So I know we talked a little bit about the gambit system, but like I'm not really clear about what the combat is. Like is it like a tower defense, or like dudes coming at you, or is it like, or does it change depending on the battle, or
it's basically an RTS. So it's a real-time strategy until two units bump into each other, and then it becomes like a super auto pets kind of auto battler situation.
Okay.
So there's a certain amount of strategy involved with positioning, both in the map, like before battle start, but also the positioning of your units within your battalion. But there's also other aspects of it too, where like if you have two units that are traveling close together, then as long as they both have stamina to fight, you can swap them out. So you might like have a defense-based unit in one of your battalions that's traveling alongside like a cavalry unit. And so if they come up against something that's unfavorable, you can like in the last ditch to like prevent failure, switch those units out as long as they're close enough. Even if they weren't the ones who bumped into the enemy unit. There's also a stamina system, so like the game tries to kind of do a Breath of the Wild kind of situation where if you have like a really good unit and like you've just like tweaked it so perfectly and it can like deal with whatever challenge you come up against, it still has stamina. And so once you've committed to a certain amount of battles, it's kind of out of commission for a little while. And so it's kind of defenseless while it sits there. Without the stamina, you have to enter a rest state in order to regain that. But in that rest state, enemies get first strike against you, which is really horrible in this game. So you kind of have to like make sure you have at least one or two backup units to like either defend your main unit or just to like balance things out and supplement your entire army. There's also assisting, a lot of... So depending on who you set the leader of a battalion, there's different assists that they can provide. I think I mentioned like there's like an archer assist where if the leader is an archer, then they can do range damage ahead of like the actual fight when you enter a battle. But there's also like healer assists where like at the end of a battle they'll automatically heal some of the units. And it becomes much, much more complex as you get through the game. There's a lot.
Okay, that's good, because I remember that like first bit you were talking about it sounded very basic and limited. So now you're like there's 36 classes and you're saying like here's a lot of ways it actually functions. Makes it sound a lot more interesting than that initial first blush was, I guess.
Yeah, and I will say like the game feels very, very well balanced. For the number of units that there are, there's always counters. And the other thing is, like, here's just a little anecdote, a little aside. Right after I discovered the witch unit and I started like getting access to like magic damage, I had found an item called the Frostbite Tomb, or Tome. I don't know, it's Tome, I guess.
Sure.
And then I was like, okay, great. This grants a skill that lets me give ice and magic damage to another unit for the cost of my passive. But what I didn't realize is it costs 2, right? So I basically was equipping that for nothing until I realized that. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have any units that have 2 passive points to do this. But there was an item that you could equip to give that passive point as a bonus. And so I was equipping that. And so it was giving my thief magic damage, right?
Yeah.
And so now I had like this dodge tank that could also deal magic damage and freeze enemies. And I was like, well, I'm basically set. But the problem with that was that a lot of the units that would normally be susceptible to magic damage are also weirdly resistant to frost. So I thought that like I was set for the game, but no, I really wasn't. And even if you have a really, really strong unit, the way that things play out, you don't necessarily get a chance to even necessarily use a unit, depending on like how the terrain is worked against you, or just how assists are worked against you. And there's this whole other like God, what are they called? There's like this secondary action that units can take as well that use up valor points. I don't know like what the economy is for the enemy team, but it's very limited for you. But it's basically, think of them like if you're playing League of Legends, they're basically like an ult. So like an archer might be able to like cover an area in arrows, or like certain characters can like build a barrier or things like that. Sure. And so like if you're hinging everything on like just having one really powerful character or like having a really good gimmick, you're not going to win.
Mm.
Like there's also a time limit on battles. So you can't just stall out and then, try and like wedge your way in there with your most powerful character. That don't work. So I've actually been doing a lot of thinking. It's a good thinking game.
Yeah, that sounds actually really good, which shit. I haven't really invested in a it sounds a little more tacticsy than I guess I expected.
Yeah, when I first saw how it was presented, I was like, oh, this is just going to be like a grindy, get a couple of characters I really like, really powerful, and then kind of just coast through the game. But that ain't it.
Yeah. Awesome.
I also like checked reviews online. I guess a lot of other people have been enjoying it. Been
good.
Reviewing really well. I wish that there was a PC release for this. I feel like it'd really be easy for me to dig in if I wasn't worrying about battery life.
What are you playing it on?
Switch.
Oh, I didn't realize it was on Switch. Okay.
It sure is. I think it's on Switch and PS5.
Okay.
Which is like, come on, just put it on PC.
I know you've also been spending some time with Dwarf Fortress to keep on the not full control type of mode here.
I like chaos. What can I say? I like a little chaos. I like to see things play out after I've set things up. I don't mind if things go awry. There's a certain freedom to that that's also like kind of liberating for me, because if it's the dwarf's fault, then it's not mine.
Okay.
But what did I talk about? I talked about the noble getting assigned to the fortress.
You sure did. That noble was murdered by a drawbridge.
Yeah, it's called the Dwarven Atom Smasher. It's an old technique from like before it was on Steam. Basically, if you had like a bunch of trash, you just throw it under a drawbridge and then smash it. And that would just get rid of it automatically. But yeah, my fortress has been getting a little more active on the military side. I've set up squads, set up training, done a couple of tricks that I know about to like help with their training. Crossbow bolts. I mean, ranged, you have one option as dwarves, and that's crossbows. They don't know how to use bows. They don't have anything more advanced than that. You got crossbows. So it doesn't matter what you make a crossbow out of, it's still going to fire the bolt the same way. So they get wooden crossbows, but they get iron or steel bolts. And then that's the main body of my dwarven military, because I don't like risking them coming up against melee problems. And that's primarily because it's hard to build a hospital. And I don't want them getting hurt in the first place, and the best way to do that is just riddle your enemies with bolts. Now, that's not always an effective method, depending on what you're fighting, but early on, it's a pretty good way of handling it. And so, the trick to building your dwarven military up for crossbows is that you build archery targets with ditches under them. So they're kind of like floating on the edge of these ditches. Because for some reason, for some weird physics quirk in the engine, like, bolts will always break if they strike like a back wall, but if there's space underneath them, they'll always fall and not break. So I don't have to keep making bolts, because they just fish them out of this pit after they're done. And that's
seems like a really goofy thing, but that game's all about doing goofy shit.
Yeah, no, there's tons of goofy shit. But yeah, we're also coming into our organized religion phase in the fortress. Yeah, you're right to say uh-oh. But yeah, all the dwarves have like different gods that they want to worship, so I have to like build like 8 different altars. I don't know if there's like a more efficient way to handle that. Like maybe you can have altars to different gods in the same space, but that felt like a problematic thing to do, so I just had to build like 8 separate temples, and that was a pain in the ass. But I also hit an aquifer. An aquifer is basically like an underground water source that will continuously fill up. It's like an underground river or some sort of reservoir that refills, right? And so, in order to deal with this, you have to figure out how to either get the water out or stop the water. And so, the method I've been doing is just sending one dwarf down and having him smooth the walls. Because smoothing the walls stops the water from going through, apparently. And I'm slowly working my way down into, like, the deep caverns, because that's where the magic starts happening.
Okay. Well, speaking of going deep down into places.
Okay. Where are you going deep down?
I've been going deep down in Void Stranger. I made it to the bottom. Twice.
You did? Wow. Why would you need to do that twice, Neil? That sounds like
because this game has all kinds of other bullshit other than getting to the bottom that matters.
It's just great bullshit. It's amazing bullshit.
Look, the first time we went down there, we were voided. The second time we weren't, but we accidentally got wings again. It was fine. We found a sword. Well, it was great.
This is a process I've been through myself. I couldn't talk about it at length because I didn't want to spoil anything. Mm-hmm. So maybe we could talk about that now. Let's talk about that first voided ending.
Yeah. That first voided ending was confusing. I still don't really know what was happening, other than I found something in the white void of getting chased by a weird tentacle octopus for a while thing.
Yeah, there's lore for that, too.
Oh, yeah. I haven't found that lore yet, but no. I imagine there is.
Well, I mean, you did. You just don't realize it.
Fair. And then it was like, cool, we're gonna fully start the game over for you. Enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I lost everything, which made me a little bit sad, because I had all those crystals, but whatever.
You barely made a dent in that system.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say.
But doing that reset, obviously I had a lot more knowledge. I figured out a new goal. I managed to fuck up going down that thing like 900 different ways again, over and over. But the second time I made it down, things were very different. No more wild song coming out of nowhere, which honestly I really like the song, so that's kind of lame that I didn't get it that time. But this game, yes, you were not lying when you said it is kind of like Fez, it is kind of like Tunic, it is a game that has a language somewhere in there, and you do not see it until you see it.
Yeah.
So now I'm sitting here going, I only have one thing I've found so far that I can explicitly say involves the language, and I realized it after my stream, because I took a picture of it, and I translated it this morning, and it still doesn't fucking help. So, it's like, it translated, I think, to, "Here was Mon," and it's like, what the fuck was, Mon? That doesn't mean anything to me. So,
well, Mon is one of the Void Lords.
Yes, exactly, but looking at "Here was Mon," I can just say, like, okay, the place I found that is a black pit with nothing else in it other than that text, so I guess Mon might be the she guy giving me hints, because I think it was related to the same... I don't know. It's all confusing. I have a whole new world opened up to me to try to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Okay, well, before we move on from this, I still definitely want to talk about... You mentioned that song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you reach the bottom of the Void Labyrinth, I guess you could call it, and then there's this vocal song that's in there, and like at first it's very disorienting and very confusing, and like it replaces your little bottom part of your UI with the lyrics.
Yep.
Right? And this was what sold the game for me. And
okay.
What the reason that this is what sold the game for me was that there's a lot of things going on during this sequence, but the main thing is like it's supposed to represent kind of like this loss of hope. Like you lose control over what's happening. You don't know like how deep you are anymore. You are faced with impossible puzzles, and you just kind of have to deal with that. Like, you are just stuck there. And thematically, that is exactly what's happening to the character. And the fact that they go to these lengths to have you experience that as the player was really cool for me. Like, obviously, it's a very dark and, like, not happy situation to be going through. But the fact that you kind of share that experience with Gray was very profound. There's a lot of times where, like, I'll say, like, oh, this is, like, a uniquely a game experience. Well, this is very much that. It's the kind of narrative that you can only really share in the way that it does through a video game. And I thought that was really powerful. And I think that you were just so disoriented that you weren't really thinking about that.
Yeah,
like, I know that the first time you got there, you ran directly into a black statue and just reset your run, and then you had to get all the way back there again.
Yeah, it was a pain in the ass. I have been... And part of this, I think, comes from streaming and being primed in certain ways. But a big part of it is streaming, where it's like, when something confusing like that happens and I don't know what to think, part of me is also going like, well, I can't just do nothing because I'm in a stream. I need to try to get out of this or something. And so when I saw, oh, I can get to the stairs, I didn't comprehend what was around them, and that matters.
There's a lot of things that matter that you...
big, deflating moment for me first time.
I think that would have been forgivable if you didn't realize already that that's what the black statue does.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because you knew what the black statue did already, that was just a sad, embarrassing moment.
It was brutal for me on my own mental. I was just like, God damn it, what have I done?
Well, you know exactly what you've done.
That's exactly. But it was one of those, like, I just spent so much fucking time getting to that point. God damn it. But anyway.
It's the equivalent of sitting down like some horribly sad poetry slam and just like flipping the table and running out of the room.
Yes.
It's just so jarring.
But the song is also, because the game spends so much time, especially early on, with not just the aesthetic, but the way the music is kind of, not Game Boyish, but definitely chiptune-y. The extremely just kind of black and gray tile set. No like splashes of color, really. Kind of feeding into that Game Boy feel again. And even the sprite work and everything really makes it that when that song hit for me, a big part of it was like, part of the confusion was coming from, this sounds completely different than everything else we've been through, in a way that is making not just what I'm seeing confusing because of what's happening, but like, there's instrumentation, there's now vocals, like, no one has spoken words in this game. They have been text for a reason. And the wild shift there very much is a powerful moment. Like, it is so unfortunate that I cut that powerful moment with a fuck up so bad.
Yeah,
but
you can't really rehab that for the first time. But
no, but it is still the thing that is maybe the roughest for me about this game, because so much of the puzzle structure, so much of all this stuff is very cool, but the core, what you are doing from like lifting up a block, putting it down, baseline puzzle that is not the like meta puzzling on top of it. I very much feel myself like burned out on already in certain ways, and I'm like, that part is really unfortunate for me, because it's the piece that I know is like grinding it. That is the piece I feel like I'm grinding against in the game, despite even these like big silly things like having to reset the world on accident and get through that stuff again. Like, that part is funny and deflating, but like not frustrating or feeling like a grind necessarily, the way that actually having to then do the core part of the game, the base part of the game again, does feel a little bit just like, oh, god dang it, like, these brain teasers are not the ones that I find satisfying when the meta structure is so satisfying.
Yeah. Well, let me say that you've certainly discovered ways of getting around a lot quicker.
Yeah.
There's even more ways to navigate. And you've had some interesting ideas that you've said on stream.
Yeah.
And there's certainly some like visual cues and hints that you can kind of take if you're paying close enough attention. But yeah, there's a lot more that you have to deal with in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't have to, but it's one of those games where like you can dig probably for the next couple of years and continue to find new things. I don't expect that, obviously.
No, I don't think I'm going to dig that far, but I'm definitely going to go deeper than I've gotten, and I've gotten to the bottom twice, so who fucking knows how much deeper it goes.
Yeah, like I said, I know it was April Fool's yesterday when you were streaming it,
mm-hmm.
and when you got to the bottom, without being voided, I had said that that's the beginning. I'm not kidding. That's the beginning
mm-hmm.
of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have like this good amount of knowledge about like what is available there, and now you get to start discovering things.
That's the hope. That's the part I'm excited about. So
I do hope you discover things.
Me too. Right. Other than that, well, I guess you had one more game you were playing, huh?
Yeah, I didn't play a ton of it, but I did want to play something with my girlfriend. So I was like, okay, well, this is a really easy to pick up and play kind of beat 'em up game that I heard about. It's by WayForward.
Mm-hmm.
And Arxis, truly a team made in heaven. The people behind Shantae and the people behind Guilty Gear. But yeah, it's kind of like a spin on the classic River City franchise. If you had played it on the NES, then you know it revolves around basically just these two guys, Kunio and Riki. I don't know if they had different names in the English version, but I know them for the Super Dodgeball arcade character select names.
Sure.
And that's Kunio and Riki. But in River City Girls, as the title might lead you to believe, you do not play as Kunio and Riki. You play as Kyoko and Misato, their girlfriends. And it kind of turns the series on its head where now Kunio and Riki are the ones who had gotten kidnapped, and it's up to the ladies to figure out what happened and do the beatdown. And what I will say about the game is that it has all the touchstones of the River City franchise. It's kind of like a pseudo RPG where you level up. A lot of it revolves around collecting money and eating food to improve stats, going to dojos and learning moves, and just kind of just increasing your repertoire as you punch and kick your way through many, many screens. So if you're into that classic beat 'em up kind of thing, then this game is definitely up your alley. What I will say is that it has the energy of kind of like an edgy, like after school special kind of dialogue writing. It has the dialogue writing of an adult trying to imagine what teenagers talk like nowadays.
Okay.
And if you've ever played a Shantae game, it's a very similar style of writing, but now it's teenagers, and that's it's what it is. Soundtrack has Jake Kaufman. Love that guy. His great compositions. The same dude who did a lot of Shantae stuff, and Mighty Switch Force, very banging soundtrack. I've never heard the Mighty Switch Force soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's got a lot going for it. But at the end of the day, I'm someone who likes complex chaos in my video games. So playing something straightforward was kind of weirdly disorienting. One of the things I do need to bring up, this is kind of just like a nitpick. When you're playing two-player, there are certain sections that require you to complete certain things, and there's that whole screen lock situation where, like, if player 2 is not, following close by, then, like, you kind of get walled off by the edge of the screen.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So when there are sections that involve platforming, which there are, it becomes kind of a pain in the ass. And, I was just as much a problem as, the person I was playing with, just because I think that a lot of the design doesn't take into account that multiplayer aspect. Though I had not played it single player, so I'm not actually sure how that would play out. And the other thing is, like, it has a very Cuphead revive system where when your character runs out of stamina, which is basically hit points in this game, you, as the other player, can run over to their dead body and stomp on them until they wake up. It basically stomps their, like, little ghost character back into their body. The game is extremely rude in how the AI handles enemies during this section. Like, we're playing on normal, like, we're not playing on an expert or hard difficulty here, but it feels like enemies will just camp out on top of your friend's dead body waiting for it to die. And, like, if you try and go over there and revive your friend, then you're probably going to get beat up to the point that you're going to die. So, and also the consequence of dying is, like, you lose half of your money, which money is very important in River City games. So
yeah, that's how you,
sometimes it's
that's
like,
how you buy upgrades.
It's like, I don't want my friend to lose all their money, but if I go in there to save them, I'm going to lose all my money. And so it kind of creates this really weird diplomatic situation where, like, do I bother trying and, like, make them mad at me? Or do I try and then we're both shit out of luck? So, also, you have to turn friendly fire off because it's on by default.
Yikes.
It's one of thems. It's one of
thems. Do you fight in front of any Waffle Houses in that game?
I mean, I wish. I feel like that's a perfect venue for some of the action that you get up to in beat 'em up games like this. But you know what? You're not the only one to feel that, Neil. Because good old Katsuhiro Harada has been just inundated with people on Twitter begging him to add Waffle House as a stage to Tekken. And, there's a certain hilarity to that. If you're familiar with that sort of online culture, you know that Waffle House is a definitely the fighting stage of real life.
I've seen some of those fucking TikToks and shit of just, people really go at it at Waffle Houses sometimes. That seems like a scary place to work.
It's insane. I love the fighting game community edits of Waffle House where, like, there's one where a woman throws a chair across the counter at an employee, and the employee just kind of, like, knocks it away with, like, one hand. And there was an edit where it was like a perfect parry in Street Fighter 6. Like, they slow it down and, like, everything flashes blue. It's, like, perfect.
Oh,
but yeah,
boy.
so Harada, being the uninitiated, let's say, to the Waffle House subculture, was very confused by all the requests to add Waffle House. But he's known for being a little bit of an abrasive guy online, and that's kind of part of his personality and charm. But rather than just outright, like, shut people down, he was like, what is this about? Someone explain this to me. And someone did. And then rather than be like, that's stupid, or like, I can't do that, he was like, I mean, he said something akin to, I appreciate the interest in adding Waffle House to Tekken 8, but unfortunately, like, both the license and the holdings are, like, held by the parent company. So I can't guarantee I'll be able to make that happen. Which is to imply that, like, he's going to try.
It's to imply he's at least going to have a phone call.
Yeah, he's sending a business header letter to Waffle House headquarters. Like, if that were to happen, I'd buy Tekken. I'm not a Tekken player, but, like, I can appreciate a game where the person in charge is responsive to stuff like this.
That would truly be ridiculous if that happens.
I don't think Sakurai could have got Waffle House in Smash Bros. That's all I'm saying. And if you can get Waffle House in Tekken 8, then you know that you've done something that even Sakurai couldn't have done, and I think that's an accomplishment.
Fair. Should we wrap up here, or do you want to talk a little bit about one more thing?
Yeah, I'll hit while the iron's hot here. Okay. So yesterday was April Fool's.
It was.
And Mojang, the parent company of Minecraft, which was now owned by Microsoft, they're kind of known for being really slow and kind of limited in the amount of content that they add to Minecraft. There's kind of like this meme involving, they do like an annual mob vote, and they present like 3 separate mobs, and they do these little like presentations, and they let the community vote which one they want to add, right? And people have gotten a little smart to like how this is kind of not cool. Like, it's been a thing for a while now where it's like, why don't you just add all 3? Like, you're one of the most successful, lucrative games in the whole fucking world. Surely you have the ability to just add all 3 of these things. And the response is always very lukewarm from Mojang. They're like, well, it's difficult to like balance things and like get them into the code in a way that like is seamless and makes sense. It's like, dude, come on. I see what the modding community does with this game. Surely the people who own the rights and run the company can add 3 mobs in a year.
Sure.
And they're always like very, standoffish. So April Fool's was yesterday, and they had pushed their April Fool's update to the most recent build of Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
And in that update, it contained a new biome, a new boss, several new items, all sorts of shit. And the community is just flabbergasted. It's like, this is the same company that says they can't add 3 monsters in a year. Now they're just, for a funny haha throwaway holiday, they're going to add all this shit, and then it's not going to be in the game later because it's April Fool's. And it certainly raises the question, like, well, if they can do this, then why isn't this game being updated more frequently?
Sure, if they can spend the man hours making an April Fool's Day joke, how can they not spend it on making permanent upgrades?
Yeah. And so they've been getting called out quite a bit ever since that happened, and I think it's warranted. I don't know. I understand that like Microsoft bought this property because they knew it was already successful, and that it had a burgeoning modding community. But like, don't be Bethesda on this, okay? Like, support your game yourself too. There's good reason for you to do it. Like, it's still an extremely popular game. So don't just sit on your laurels, Microsoft. I know you're spreading your seed far and wide, and you have lots of other things you're dealing with right now. But like, this is one of your aces in the hole. This is like your surefire winner, is Minecraft. So get it right. Anyway, that's all I had to say about that.
Understandable. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We appreciate you. Audio Games is hosted and produced by Matthew Lane and Neil Jimenez. Our theme music is Recharging by Gooset. If you'd like to reach out to us, please email us at audiogamespodcast@gmail.com. No, I've just been bad about getting enough sleep lately, so.
No, I mean, haven't we all?
Yeah.
It's these longer days, man. We're coming into more sunlight. It's like, well, I don't want to sleep.
Exactly. I gotta have my at least 5-ish hours of darkness before I can even think about going to sleep.
Oh my god. I had my overnight shift at the end of the month for business reasons.
Uh-huh.
And I have not recovered from that myself. Like, I came home and I was like, I gotta go back to work in like 4 hours. Do I even bother going to sleep? Do I even bother? Should I just stay up and play video games?
You remember the good old days when we would stay up and play video games just for the fuck of it?
Just for the fuck of it.
And like kind of be okay the next day or like recover within a day or two.
Without thought. Just do it.
Yeah.
With no worry. Like,
Those
there's
times...
consequence, sure. I'm sure we paid for that in some way.
Sure, but not the way we do now.
Certainly not.
So I have a question for you, Matt.
What's up?
Have you done mini golfing anytime in the last, I don't know, let's say 10 years?
Probably. No, I don't recall. Not in the last decade, no.
I went mini golfing this weekend.
You did?
I did. But it was fucking weird. For 2 reasons.
Why?
Number one, it was indoors. Like in a fucking basement.
Basement where?
In the middle of Portland.
I thought, like when you say I went mini golfing, but it was weird. It was in a basement. It makes me think of like a residential basement.
No, okay.
Like some dude invented you over.
The fucking bathrooms in this place literally had showers in them. Why would you need showers in a bathroom at a fucking mini golf place?
You've never done mini golf as intensely as some people.
I guess not. I guess not. Anyway, the thing that was actually tripping me the hell out though is all of these holes didn't have a fucking like start here pad or whatever to like place your ball or like a divot or anything. It was just like just fucking put it down on the here somewhere near the beginning of this and go.
So there was no designated beginning.
There was no designated here's the start of a hole for each hole.
Okay.
And it like broke my brain.
I mean, even big golf courses have like tee sections.
Exactly.
Okay. So did you accidentally play courses the wrong way or something?
No. We didn't play courses the wrong way or anything, but like literally walking onto the first course, we walked over to it. It was like, this is number one. And I like walked onto it and it was like, where the fuck is the start of this thing? And I was like at the hole. I'm like, what is happening? Where am I?
Okay, well, you don't need to defend this business through anonymity here, Neil. What are we talking, like, basement golf? Like, what, is there something else? Is like a fun center? Is there something above ground?
Apparently they also do axe throwing and have, like, escape room and shit in there. I don't know.
That's a really weird
pirate themed
to me. A pirate like
themed
axe throwing,
neon pirate themed. I should specify neon.
Neon pirate. Okay. And if you don't escape the room, you have to play golf in the basement.
Maybe. Like, don't get me wrong. I had fun. It was fucking weird. My brain could not handle it. Maybe I'm just too old. I can't handle it.
I can't handle mini golf. I'm too old. It's a sad place to be, Neil. I don't recommend the axe throwing if you can't handle the mini golf. It's a little too intense for Neil. Neil, did we have questions?
We did not. I did check the email.
Did you check the comments?
No.
I'm going to check comments really quick.
I did not check the comments. I'm sorry.
I'm going to check comments right now.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, switch my account to audio games. Check my videos.
For those of you commenting in the comments, we appreciate you. P.S. Send an email.
We appreciate you in the comments, and we see you. Not immediately.
Eventually.
Eventually. No, okay, there's no... We can cut this part. There's no comments.
Okay.
I rescind what I said. We hate you, commenters.
No, don't say that.
Why don't you engage?
Oh my god, don't do that to them.
You can ask us whatever you want.
You're allowed to lurk.
Yeah, well, I'd like you more if you commented.